welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be changing the transmission fluid on my Toyota Sienna. I've got about 140,000 miles on here, and it's got the original transmission fluid. So in today's video, we're going to go ahead and do a fill-in flush with about 10 quarts of world standard transmission fluid and change the filter and the gasket and everything inside the pan, so stay tuned. So to do the transmission flush, we're going to need the strainer right here. So this is the part number right here for this thing. This is an OEM strainer I picked up from Fred Anderson Toyota on one of those 25% off sales that they have like every 2 or 3 months. So pretty much a strainer is a filter. You can see the element inside there. Just a basic plastic filter that goes into the transmission right there, and then it picks up on that side. Here's the original manufacturer of it, Roki, right there. So you're gonna need that. You'll need the O-ring right here. So the part number for the O-ring is right here. In addition to those parts, you're gonna need the gasket. So this vehicle actually uses a metal gasket. So I picked up an OEM gasket when I ordered all this stuff. And then for my flush, I'm gonna go ahead and use 10 quarts of world standard ATF from Toyota. I know a lot of people use the Valvoline ATF, the Max Life ATF. You can try that out, but for mine, I'm just gonna stick with the world standard. It's been in there for 140,000 miles, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a drain and fill with 10 of these. In addition to that, you're gonna need your basic hand tools and everything. I have this right here that I'm gonna be using to get into the diagnostics of it. It's basically a dongle that plugs into your OBD2 port right here, and what it does is it connects to their app and it gives you kind of a TechStream Lite. It's not the full version of TechStream, it's just most of the diagnostics that you can run on Toyota. In order for us to get to the temperature that we need on the transmission, so we know when to actually check the level of it, we got to make sure the temperature is between 104 and like 113 or 119 or something like that degrees Fahrenheit, when that's the optimal temperature to check your level of your transmission fluid. So the first thing we want to do is get into here. There's 2 clips right here that you kind of just push and get out, and then a 10 millimeter, it takes this plastic off right here, and it gives us access to the fill plug up here. I think it's a 24 millimeter fill plug that's common with all Toyota transmissions. So that's the first thing you need to do. Make sure you can take apart the fill plug right there, and then once we get underneath, I'll show you what we're going to do down here. So underneath here, we're going to go ahead, drain the fluid right here with a 6 millimeter Allen key. We go ahead and take this out right here. It's going to let you drain what's up to the level. Sometimes if your level is low or right at the level, there won't be anything that drips out initially. So once you get inside there, there's actually another straw that uses the same 6 millimeter that you take out inside there that lets you drain it all out. So underneath here, pretty much all the 10 millimeters to drop the pan are pretty easy, except for 2. There's one right here that's kind of in the way of this. And then there's one right here that's in the way of this little reinforcement here. You can kind of see the head of it, but the problem is trying to get a 10 millimeter in there and actually turn it and get it out. This bolt right here, this 19 millimeter, is the one you basically take off. So you take off that nut, and that allows you to jack up the transmission about 2 inches to be able to clear enough to get a 10 millimeter to turn those 2 bolts. All right, once you get that out, go ahead, just get the 6 millimeter Allen back in here, feel it inside, and then unscrew the straw up in there. It helps just to get the socket in there and screw it by hand, but it's a red little straw that's threaded, and it comes right out, and then it lets the rest of the fluid flow through. So here's what the straw looks like when you take it out. It's just a little red straw with the Allen key on the end. So that's what you end up right there turning with the Allen key. The drain plug on here, I thought it used a specialty transmission washer, but it looks like it's a regular aluminum washer. I should have checked this and ordered an extra one, but it looks like I'm gonna have to go ahead and reuse this one. I don't have a I do have a crush washer that's aluminum, but that overall outer diameter is a little smaller than this. So what I want to do is I'm going to end up flipping it over to this side against the pan, because you can see that right there has been damaged a little bit from, you know, the hole on the transmission side. So I'm going to just flip it over and then have that against the actual nut, so that way it doesn't damage that hole. But we'll go ahead and just reuse that for now. So once this thing trickles down to next to nothing, we'll go ahead and put the straw back in, put the drain plug back in, and then I'm gonna go ahead, raise the transmission up and unbolt these 18 or 19 10 millimeters to lower the pan. Once you screw it up high enough, it just stops by hand, and get the washer and drain bolt back on. I think this thing only requires like 13 foot-pounds of torque or something, so not much torque if you're actually going to torque it back. Alright, so now that I've got this set up, I'm going to go ahead and use my transmission jack I have here. This thing's come in handy for all these different projects I do. So go ahead and close this thing up, line this up with the bell housing right there so I can actually lift it without blocking the pan. So let me back that up a little. So there in the back, I ended up putting up that Vivor stand right there to hold the back up in case we lose any kind of balance, and make sure that it holds it while we jack the front up. Always make sure you guys think of that when you're working on a jack or anything where the car is lifted in the air, not to tilt it backward for your safety. Go ahead and jack it up. Watch that thing go up right here to lift this thing up a little. So you see it lifted up a little bit there. All right, we were able to get it right up to there. That's enough to give us some clearance underneath. So I should be able to get that 10 millimeter up into there now. Once we go under here and look closer. So this one definitely, now we can get the swivel in there. Also, I can get something across here like a gear wrench or something. This one back here, again, yeah, you should be able to get in there and just loosen it, and then basically just hand loosen all this once we get in there. But that's just enough to get those two, and those are going to be the two hardest ones because everything else is pretty easy around here. Last bolt right here, and it just drops right down. There's still a lot of fluid in here, so just kind of make sure you let it drain. So looks like the pan is still way full of oil. That little straw for the level is nowhere near the bottom of that pan, so pretty much there's still another 2 quarts in this pan, so just be careful when you take it down. But right now I'm gonna go ahead and take the 10 millimeters on either corner of here on the actual strainer, and then take this thing down and go ahead and swap it out. Pull out the O-ring that's in there. Make sure you don't double up the O-ring. So go ahead and get your new strainer, filter, whatever, and then the new O-ring. You go ahead and just grab some of the existing fluid that's already in here and just go ahead and put it onto the actual filter here. Just, you know, just basically tuck the O-ring around there, lube it up, and then we'll just snap this thing back in before we get back to it. Snaps right in. Grab your two 10mm back, hand thread these in, and then tighten it down to 11 foot-pounds. All right, here's what we got out right there. You can see that's a ton in that actual pan, and then the other one I collected, I'm gonna go ahead and pour it into a gallon container just to see how much we got out. That way I could do the initial fill back in on exactly what we took out. I'm gonna go ahead and actually pump it through the cooler and then kind of get a little bit more of the fluid out from the pump and the rest of the transmission. That way we flush it through and get some nice clean fluid in there. We filled up easily 3.5 quarts right there into this gallon container. The rest of it is still the residuals down here. Go ahead, clean out these magnets, kind of wipe down the pan, get any kind of dirt and residue out of here. Go ahead and toss the filter that we just took out and then replace it with a new one. And then once we do that, we'll go ahead and get the pan back up in there, tighten all the bolts down to about 11 foot-pounds. There was one bolt in the back, like I think in this position right here, or was it this one? I forgot one of these two, but when you get to it, you'll notice it had a little bit of blue thread lock on it. It was the only one that had the blue thread lock on it. It was a little bit different bolt than the rest of them. Go ahead and clean up all the magnets. This thing looks like it's held on to a couple little shards of steel or something in here that over the years, I guess, has fallen off the transmission. But yeah, that's what these magnets are for, just to collect all the sediment. But you can see all the shavings and everything that come off the transmission kind of collect down here and get onto these magnets. So just wipe all that clean and then put these off to the side and then put them back in their spots. We went ahead and cleaned everything up. You can see everything's spotless inside there. Got those magnets all cleaned up. So we'll go ahead, put the new gasket onto here and go ahead and get it onto the transmission and bolt this thing back up so we could refill everything. On the new filter, make sure there's no kinks or bends or anything, because these things usually ship and they get bent up, but they're metal, so it's easy to just reform it back. Make sure everything lines up. You got the right one with the right number of holes and everything looks like it matches up right. So we'll go ahead, get it lined up. You want to go ahead, get it basically opposite, get all the opposite screws in, and then kind of make sure all your holes are lined up in there. You can see this thing sitting down there just constantly drips. Everything that's still in the transmission is just still trying to drip down, and it gets into the bell housing all the way over here. So just make sure you keep something under it to keep everything from dripping out of here. But we'll go ahead, get this pan up in there. We're gonna go ahead and thread everything by hand. Make sure you don't cross thread or mess up anything. Once you get enough of them in here, go ahead and just tighten it up so it's flush, and then we stop some of this dripping. Now that we got pretty much all the bolts except for the last 3, the one that has a thread lock and then the 2, this thing is still kind of dripping right here. So once I tighten down the gasket and everything, that should seal that up. But we want to make sure everything's tight, so you can either hand tighten them all, or what I'm going to do is use an impact and just slowly tighten them. This last bolt that had the thread lock, I went ahead and put some more blue thread lock on here just to put it back in. I think this is the one that doesn't have an open top. All the other ones have an open top, so I think that's why it has thread lock on it. So to get the last 2 bolts back in, you gotta jack the thing back up. What I use is like a magnet, at least it holds it, and then I can kind of get it into there and then just spin it with the magnet just to catch the threads. And then after that, once you're in the threads, you can kind of get your finger in there or get the tool in there. But the main thing is trying to get it to the hole without damaging or messing up anything. So I find using a magnet with it on the tip like that, going into the hole and then just spinning it using just the magnet forces. All right, once you're done, lower the jack and then spray everything down with some super clean or some brake clean just to get everything cleaned up. We ended up cleaning everything up with some super clean just to wipe down all that transmission fluid that leaked everywhere and dripped everywhere, so everything's nice and dry. So the next thing I want to do is I'm gonna go ahead and remove this lower cover so I can access the radiator lines, the coolant lines that go into the radiator. That's where I'm gonna do the flush, where I turn on the engine and let the transmission pump out about 2 quarts of fluid, and then I'm gonna fill 2 quarts at a time. After I get that 3.5 quarts that I initially took out here, I'm gonna go ahead and pump that in, and then we'll do that through the radiator cooler. So at this point, we're gonna go ahead and put 3.5 quarts back in just to have some fluid in the pan. Most people will probably be done at this step, but me, I'm gonna go 1 step further, as I explained earlier. So here's the transfer pump I'm gonna be using just to pump the fluid from the actual thing into the transmission. So basically, you put one end right here, in and out. Then this thing goes into your quart or your gallon or whatever you're gonna use for your fluid. And then this thing goes into the transmission, so you just pump it. I've got these clear hoses, so they are basically 3/8 inner, 1/2 outer. I bought this from Lowe's. So I went ahead and set up the pump with the clear hoses. The bottom tube right there is the out, and the top tube is the in near the handle. So basically, put this one into your quart, pump it out into that spot. Make sure it's securely in the hole, pump it in. Oop, dripping, so pumped it too fast, so you gotta do it kind of, yeah, this is kind of a messy deal because it doesn't go all the way in because there's a plate in the way, so it kind of stops some of the fluid from transferring really quickly in there. Yeah, went ahead and cleaned this all up, but definitely don't like filling it from here, at least with the pumping method, because of how slow it has to be done, and then also the mess we're gonna make. So I'll go take you underneath and do it the other way. So I went ahead and removed the front undercover here. It's pretty easy. It's a bunch of 10 millimeters and then like 7 clips along here that basically drop it. And then once you drop it, you have a lot more room to work with. But what we're gonna do is go ahead, undo this. If you're not sure of which line is the return and supply, you can always look on the transmission. The top line is always going to be your return line, and the bottom is going to be your outline, the one that sends it out to the cooler, because it's lower in the transmission, so that's where it pumps the dirty fluid into here.
and then it basically cools it through the transmission, and then it pumps it back out to the top. So if you're not sure, you always just check the routing of your hoses from the cooler. Once you get it loose, just get some pliers and just kind of spin it, grab it and spin it in the nipple so you can break it loose from there. Once you loosen that, you'll be able to just pull it right off. All right, so now we can go ahead, put a nipple right onto this guy and pump it in, and then this guy is going to be your drain line coming out of the radiator. So here's my little setup right now. So you can see the line that goes back into the top of the transmission. I plugged it up to the pump right now, so I can just pump new fluid straight into there. The drain line, which is coming out of the radiator, I've got it down to this bucket right here into a gallon container, so I can fill that up when we go ahead and pump the old fluid out of here. So now that I've got this all set up, I can go ahead and just pump it from the new cord straight into the transmission without worrying about making a mess, because it's a nice sealed path for it to pump right into. All right, so now that we put that 3.5 quarts into there of new fluid, I'm gonna go ahead, go into the car, turn the car on for about 20 to 30 seconds, and then let the transmission basically pump the old fluid into my gallon down here. And then we'll do that basically 2 or 3 times just to get the fluid in. Just remember to count how many quarts that you end up filling it back up, so you have enough at the end to fill it to the top, instead of, you always got to count and keep track of how many quarts you have. Also, when you're in there, when you've got the car on, go basically take it out of park, put it into drive, back in park, drive, back in park, just to get the gears going through and the pump moving. So it looks like the first pass at it, barely got half a quart in there, so I'll go ahead and let it run a little bit longer and let it pump out better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we'll do our first 2 quart exchange now after we took that out. All right, we'll go ahead and start our second pump through. That 30 seconds, or maybe a little over 30 seconds, pulled another 2 quarts out. Got one last pump through right now. That last one got another 2 quarts out, so this should be good for our 10 quart flush. Our last pump through down here before we put the hose back on. The last half quart right here. So I'm gonna leave this whole setup, disconnect, reconnect the line into the transmission, and then drain all this residual into one of the empty ones that I have left over.
So next thing we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and plug in this E-Diag Elite into the OBD2 port and get to the temperature of the transmission and kind of monitor that. We want to get 95 to about 115 degrees. That's the range you want to get to basically make sure your fluid is warm enough and that you have enough. So we'll open the drain out the excess, and then close it up. I'll go ahead and show you guys also the manual way to do it using the jumper on the pin number 4 and pin number 13 on the OBD2 port. That way you can do it without having this tool, but having this tool is very handy.
So we'll go ahead and jumper the pins down here on the OBD2 to show you how to do it the manual way. Right now, if you look at my OBD2 port, it's actually upside down compared to the way you reference it, but basically the top is the side with a wider on the little V there, and you want to go 4 over from the right side on this particular one. I'll show you a diagram on the screen. So that's basically 1, 2, 3, 4. That's right here. And then you want to go 5 over from the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's pin 13 right there.
All right, once you put that jumper in, go ahead, get in the car, start it up. Once it gets up, you'll see all these flashing and the diagnostic code. Go drive, neutral, within the first 6 seconds, and then you'll see that it just stays in drive. And then right now you can see there's no thing in there. Even when you put it into park, right there, we put it into park and it doesn't show anything right there. That means it's not ready yet. Once that thing turns into a D, the D means that it's ready and it's within the temperature range. If it's blank, it's nothing. If it's a flashing D, like a really fast flashing D, that means it's too hot and you need to let it cool down. So once we get the temperature within range, go ahead, leave the engine running, open your drain and let whatever fluid that's overflowing drain out until it dripples. And then once you do that, then you just put the plug back in. Yep, once it does that, then pretty much put the cap back on once it starts. Go ahead and torque this down to, I think, 30 foot-pounds. That was the setting for this one. Once all that's done, go ahead, clean up your mess, put everything back together as far as the lower covers go, and then road test it, make sure everything works. So this last bolt right here with the transmission is 65 foot-pounds. I had to rig it with this bar and a wrench because this thing gets stuck right here. You can't get a wrench or a torque wrench in there good enough or tall enough, so. Hey guys, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video on changing the transmission filter, gasket, and doing that fill and flush on the Sienna right here. It's the same process for most of the 2GR V6s like the Avalon and the Highlander and the Camry that use the same engine. If you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to your channel, go ahead and subscribe to your channel, turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload a video. For all these different DIY projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.